For 8 years, I had believed in the life my husband and I had built together. We had our little world, a cozy home, a beautiful 5-year-old daughter, and a relationship that, to outsiders, seemed strong, loving, and full of trust. I never thought I would be the kind of woman who had to check her husband's phone in the middle of the night, my hands trembling, my heart pounding in my chest. We were amicable, as far as I knew. There were no screaming matches, no icy silences, no nights spent on opposite sides of the bed, backs turned. We spent time with my brother and his wife, Sophia, who I had grown to consider a close friend. We would go on double dates, host family dinners, and celebrate holidays together. It was comfortable, predictable, safe. Until the night I decided to follow my gut. It started with something small, something easy to dismiss. My husband, Daniel, had been spending an unusual amount of time in the bathroom with his phone. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he was just scrolling through social media or watching videos. But then I started noticing little things, how he would angle his screen away from me, how he would smile to himself when he thought I wasn't looking, how his showers started lasting longer than necessary. That night, after he had gone to bed, I reached for his phone, my breath shallow. The moment my fingers touched the screen, I hesitated. Was I about to become the kind of wife who snooped? The kind of woman who couldn't trust her husband? But something inside me whispered, you already don't trust him. That's why you're here. I unlocked the phone, his passcode was still the same. My stomach twisted. If he were hiding something, wouldn't he have changed it? The messages were there. Right in front of me. His text thread with Sophia. And the photos. Explicit, undeniable proof of betrayal. Photos of her, posing for him, seductive, knowing. Messages filled with flirtation, longing, confessions of stolen moments I had been too blind to notice. I felt the world tilt. My breath came in short gasps, my vision blurred with unshed tears. My brother's wife. My friend. The woman who had sat in my kitchen, laughing over a cup of coffee, playing with my daughter's hair as if she were family. I was suffocating. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages. Compliments. Desires. Secret meetings. And then, the final blow. I wish I had met you first. The air was thick with betrayal, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't lift. I wanted to scream, to throw his phone across the room, to wake him up and demand answers. Instead, I sat there, silent and alone, my world crumbling around me. I sat there, paralyzed, staring at the screen until the letters blurred together. The reality of what I had uncovered was suffocating, pressing into my chest like a crushing weight. Daniel stirred in his sleep beside me, and I froze. For a moment, I entertained the thought of shaking him awake, shoving the phone in his face, demanding answers. But what would he say? Would he lie? Would he admit it? Would he beg for forgiveness or tell me it was all in my head? And Sophia. God. My brother. How was I supposed to tell him? How could I sit across from him at dinner, knowing what his wife had done? I clenched my jaw, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I forced myself to scroll back to the very beginning of the conversation. If I was going to confront him, I needed to know everything. The texts went back months. Maybe longer. You looked so beautiful tonight. I couldn't keep my eyes off you. I hate that we have to be careful, but it's exciting too, isn't it? I can't stop thinking about the last time we were alone together. The way you touched me. The way you kissed me. A cold shudder ran down my spine. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional. He didn't just want her body, he wanted her. And she wanted him. The messages were careful but intimate, like a game they had mastered. They never named locations outright, but the clues were there. Sophia would mention being free during certain afternoons. Daniel would text her minutes before leaving the house. I felt sick realizing how many times I had been in the same room as them, completely unaware. One message stood out, stabbing through me like a blade. I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. What did that mean? Were they planning to leave us? Were they laughing at me and my brother, making fools of us? I could hear my own heartbeat, heavy and erratic, pounding in my ears. Daniel shifted again, letting out a soft sigh in his sleep. I turned to look at him, my stomach churning. How many times had I reached for him at night, feeling safe in his presence, while he had been fantasizing about her? How many times had I smiled at Sophia, never realizing that she had already betrayed me in the worst way possible? I wanted to wake him up, to scream, to throw every single thing he had ever given me in his face. But instead, I did something I never thought I would do. I got up. I slipped out of bed, clutching his phone like a piece of burning coal. I needed time to think. Time to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. Because one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same again. I paced the darkened living room, Daniel's phone still clutched in my hand, my thoughts spiraling into chaos. The walls of my home felt different now, tainted. A house that once held warmth, love, and safety now felt like a carefully constructed lie. My heart ached with the weight of betrayal, but I knew I couldn't act on raw emotion. Not yet. Confronting Daniel without a plan would only give him the chance to manipulate me, to twist his way out of it. And my brother. I couldn't tell him. Not yet. I had to be sure. I needed proof beyond a few messages. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to focus. I opened Daniel's photo album, scrolling past harmless pictures of our daughter, vacation snapshots, and candid shots of me I had once thought were taken out of love. Then, tucked away in a hidden folder, I found them. Dozens of them. Sophia, posing seductively in dimly lit rooms, her body barely covered. A few were selfies, others were taken by someone else. By him. My hands shook as I clicked on a video file. The sound of Daniel's voice filled the silence of the living room, murmuring soft praises. A giggle. A moan. I stopped it before I could hear more, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't just some harmless flirtation. They had slept together. Over and over. The betrayal sank its claws even deeper, tearing through whatever remnants of denial I had left. I needed air. I slipped outside, the cool night air biting at my skin. The neighborhood was quiet, houses dark and still. I wondered how many women had stood exactly where I was, their lives crumbling around them while the rest of the world carried on, oblivious. I had no idea how long I stood there, lost in my own devastation, before I heard the soft creak of the front door behind me. Daniel. He stepped outside, rubbing his eyes. What are you doing out here? His voice was thick with sleep. He had no idea his world was about to collapse. I stared at him, my chest tightening. The urge to slap him, to scream at him, to break him the way he had broken me, burned through me like wildfire. But instead, I forced my voice to stay even. Couldn't sleep. He frowned. Why are you holding my phone? I hesitated for a fraction of a second before slipping it into the pocket of my robe. I thought I heard something. I grabbed it in case I needed to call someone. It was a pathetic lie, but he was still too groggy to question it. He reached for me, and I flinched before I could stop myself. His brows furrowed, confusion flickering across his face. Are you okay? No. I was standing on the edge of a cliff, my entire life hanging in the balance. But I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Yeah, I said softly. Just tired. I turned and walked back inside before he could touch me again, before he could press his lips to my forehead and pretend he was the loving husband he used to be. Because now I knew the truth. And the fire inside me was only growing stronger. The next morning, I moved through the house like a ghost. I made breakfast for our daughter, packed her lunch, and kissed her forehead like it was any other day. But inside, I was unraveling. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I wondered if he was texting her right now, sending her the same flirtations he used to send me. He looked up, catching me staring. You okay? You seem off. I forced a smile. Just tired. I had no intention of letting him know I had seen everything. Not yet. If I wanted to do this right, I needed to stay one step ahead of him. After dropping our daughter off at school, I drove aimlessly, my thoughts a tangled mess of rage and heartbreak. And then, without thinking, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of my brother's office. I hadn't planned on coming here. I wasn't ready to tell him. But the second I saw him through the glass doors, leaning over his desk, my heart clenched. He didn't know. He had no idea that his wife was sending naked photos to my husband. That she was letting him touch her, kiss her, whisper things to her that should have been reserved for him. I stood frozen, debating whether to go inside or turn around and pretend I never came. But before I could decide, he looked up and spotted me. A smile spread across his face as he waved me in. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, already knowing that what I was about to do would shatter his entire world. Hey, my brother said, grinning as he leaned back in his chair. What brings you here? Everything okay? No. Nothing was okay. But how do you tell someone that the person they love most is betraying them? I lowered myself into the chair across from him, my hands twisting together in my lap. My voice cracked. I swallowed hard and tried again. I need to tell you something. His smile faltered. You're scaring me. What's wrong? The words felt too big, too cruel, too final. But there was no way around it. It's Sophia. His expression darkened instantly. What about her? I took a deep breath and forced the words out before I lost my courage. She's cheating on you. With Daniel. The room fell into a suffocating silence. My brother stared at me, his face unreadable. What? I wanted to take it back. I wanted to erase the pain that was about to come. But there was no going back now. I found messages. Photos. Videos. My voice shook, but I pushed through. They'd been seeing each other behind our backs. He exhaled sharply, his jaw clenching. That's not funny. I'm not joking. His hands curled into fists on the desk. No. She wouldn't do that. I pulled out my phone and placed it in front of him. See for yourself. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with trembling hands, he picked up the phone and started scrolling. I watched as his face changed, confusion, disbelief, then devastation. His fingers tightened around the phone, his breathing shallow. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were filled with something I had never seen before. Pure, unfiltered heartbreak. And rage. What do you want to do? I asked softly. He let out a bitter laugh, rubbing his hands over his face. I want to kill him. I didn't try to stop him. I didn't say, calm down or think about this rationally. Because if I were in his shoes, I'd feel the exact same way. But revenge wouldn't fix this. We need to be smart, I whispered. His gaze snapped to mine. How long have you known? Since last night. And you waited until now to tell me? I flinched. I wasn't sure how to do it. My voice cracked. I didn't want to hurt you. He exhaled, his hands shaking as he set my phone down. She told me she loved me this morning, he whispered. She kissed me goodbye and told me she'd see me tonight. A fresh wave of disgust rolled through me. Daniel had kissed me goodbye, too. How many times had they kissed us before running to each other? What do we do now? I asked. My brother looked up, his expression unreadable. We end this. Together. The ride home felt suffocating. My brother barely spoke, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. I didn't blame him. How do you process something like this? I could see the betrayal boiling under his skin, the way his jaw clenched, the way he blinked hard as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. But there was no waking up. This was real. And tonight, everything would come crashing down. We had a plan. A confrontation. Both of them. Together. Daniel texted me earlier, saying he'd be home late. Work is keeping me longer than expected. I could only imagine what kind of work he meant. Sophia, on the other hand, was already at home, sending my brother pictures of the dinner she was making, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. He hadn't responded. When we pulled into my driveway, I turned to him. "Are you sure about this?" His fingers flexed against the steering wheel. "I need to hear it from her." I nodded, even though I already knew what we'd hear. Lies. Excuses. Pleading. None of it would matter. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The house was dark except for the glow of the kitchen light. I felt sick walking through the front door, knowing what was about to happen. I didn't have to wait long. Daniel walked in 15 minutes later, tossing his keys onto the counter. When he saw me standing in the kitchen, he smiled like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe. Why are you just standing there?" I said nothing. He stepped closer. "Everything okay?" My heart pounded. No. Nothing was okay. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. His brow furrowed. "I told you, work ran late." A lie. Right to my face. I nodded slowly, then turned toward the doorway. "You might want to tell my brother that." Daniel barely had time to react before my brother stepped into the room. The color drained from his face. That's when he knew. The air turned thick with unspoken words, the tension so suffocating I thought I might choke on it. My brother's voice was quiet but lethal. "Tell me the truth, Daniel." Daniel swallowed hard. "I don't know what." My brother slammed his fist onto the counter so hard that the sound made me jump. "Don't lie to me." Daniel flinched, his eyes darting toward me, searching for an escape. There wasn't one. "I know," my brother growled. "I know everything." Daniel's breath hitched. He took a step back, his entire body rigid. "Listen, No, I cut in, my voice shaking with fury. "You don't get to talk. You don't get to explain this away. I saw everything, Daniel. The texts. The photos. The videos. You lied to me, to my brother, to our entire family." Daniel's lips parted like he was about to protest, but he snapped his mouth shut when my brother took a step forward. And then, like the coward he was, he turned to me instead. "Baby, I laughed. It was hollow, sharp, a sound I barely recognized as my own. "Don't. You don't get to call me that." A beat of silence. Then, Sophia's voice shattered it. "What's going on?" We all turned. She stood in the doorway, confusion written across her face, a dish towel in her hand. But the second she saw my brother's expression, her own faltered. And then she saw me. And then she saw Daniel. The blood drained from her face. My brother's voice was dangerously low. "Say his name." Sophia's lips parted, but no sound came out. That was all the confirmation he needed. My brother let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "How long?" Sophia swallowed, her eyes flicking to Daniel. I saw it, the silent exchange. The help me lie look. But Daniel was still frozen, his guilt weighing him down like chains. My brother's voice turned sharp. "How long?" A beat of silence. Then. "A year." The words felt like a slap. A whole year. 12 months of stolen moments. A year of whispered secrets, hidden touches, and lies that stretched longer than I could comprehend. Daniel exhaled, dragging a hand down his face, looking like he wished he could disappear. Sophia, selfish, pathetic Sophia, looked relieved. Like telling the truth finally unburdened her. But my brother wasn't done. Did you ever love me? His voice was so quiet, I almost didn't hear it. Sophia flinched. Of course I did. Did? He let out a breathless laugh. Jesus Christ, you're not even trying to pretend, are you? I had never seen my brother cry before. Not once. But when he blinked, I saw the shine in his eyes, the crack in his resolve. And that was what finally shattered me. Because he didn't deserve this. None of us did. Daniel took a cautious step forward. We never meant to hurt you. Shut up. My brother's voice cracked, his hands clenched into fists. I placed a hand on his arm, grounding him, keeping him from doing something he couldn't take back. And then I turned to Daniel. For the first time in 8 years, I saw him for what he truly was. A liar. A cheat. A man I had given my life to, only to have him destroy it without a second thought. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. I want you out of my house. Daniel paled. Wait. I shook my head. No. You don't get to beg. You don't get to apologize. You made your choice. Now live with it. His throat bobbed. But. Get. Out. His face twisted, and for a second, I thought he might fight me on it. But then my brother took a step forward, and Daniel seemed to think better of it. His shoulders slumped. And without another word, he grabbed his keys and walked out the door. Sophia let out a shaky breath, looking at my brother with pleading eyes. I don't. His voice was hollow. I don't want to hear it. And then he left, too. Sophia turned to me, but I was already walking away. She wasn't worth my breath. I closed the door behind me, leaned against it, and let out a breath so heavy I thought I might collapse. It was over. I should have felt relief. But all I felt was empty. The silence in the house was deafening. No Daniel. No Sophia. No lies hanging in the air like thick smoke. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt powerful, victorious even, for standing my ground and kicking him out. But I didn't. I felt hollow. I sat at the dining table, staring at nothing, the weight of it all pressing down on me. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair, it was about the years I had spent believing in a life that wasn't real. Every memory with Daniel now felt like a cruel joke, a lie I had unknowingly swallowed whole. And my brother. God. I had never seen him like that. That quiet heartbreak, the devastation barely contained beneath his fury. I had thought confronting them would bring closure, but all it did was rip us open, leaving wounds that no amount of apologies could ever heal. A soft knock at the door startled me. For a brief, stupid second, I thought it was Daniel. That he had come back to beg, to grovel, to feed me more lies. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or disappointed when I opened the door and found my brother standing there instead. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhaustion carved into every feature. Neither of us spoke. We just stood there, two people who had lost everything in a single night. Then, without a word, he stepped inside and sank onto the couch, his hands laced together, his head bowed. I sat beside him. For the longest time, we just sat there in silence. Finally, he spoke. She said she loved me. His voice was hoarse, raw. And the whole time, she was sleeping with him. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I know. He let out a bitter laugh. A whole year. An entire fucking year. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing to say. After a moment, he exhaled, leaning back against the couch. Do you think they ever cared about us? The question was a knife to the gut. I wanted to say yes. That at some point, before the lies, before the betrayal, there was something real. But I couldn't. Because love doesn't coexist with deceit. I shook my head. I don't know. He scoffed. I keep thinking about every time she kissed me. Every time she said she was running errands or meeting up with friends. How many of those times was she with him? I clenched my jaw. I had asked myself the same thing all night. How many times had Daniel touched me with the same hands that touched her? How many times had he told me he loved me only to whisper those same words to another woman? My brother leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "What do we do now?" he asked. I wished I had an answer. I wished I could tell him that it would be okay, that we would heal, that this wouldn't destroy us. But right now? Right now, I just felt broken. "We survive," I whispered. Because that was all we could do. For now. The days blurred together after that. Daniel tried to call. I ignored him. Sophia texted my brother. He blocked her. Everything was unraveling, and yet, life moved forward. I had to hold it together for my daughter. She asked where her daddy was. I told her he was staying somewhere else for a while. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't the full truth either. I wasn't ready for that conversation. But I knew it was coming. One afternoon, as I folded laundry, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A long pause. Then. "It's me. Daniel." I almost hung up. Almost. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold. He let out a shaky breath. "Can we talk?" I closed my eyes. "We have nothing to talk about. Please." His voice cracked. I know I hurt you. I know I ruined everything. But I can't just walk away from you. From our daughter." Anger flared in my chest. "You already did." He went silent. I forced a steady breath. "You made your choice, Daniel. And now you have to live with it. I still love you." The words were a slap to the face. I let out a hollow laugh. "You don't love me. You love the version of me that didn't know the truth." "Please," he whispered. "Just meet me. One last time." I hesitated. Not because I wanted to see him. But because I wanted closure. I didn't owe him forgiveness. But I owed myself an ending. I agreed to meet him at a small coffee shop downtown. The moment I walked in and saw him sitting there, I realized something. I didn't love him anymore. Not in the way I once did. Love is trust. It's safety. It's knowing that the person beside you would never deliberately destroy you. And Daniel had done exactly that. He stood when he saw me, his face etched with exhaustion. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. I sat across from him, folding my hands in my lap. "Say what you need to say." He exhaled. "I messed up. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you." I arched a brow. "And yet, you did." His jaw clenched. "I was selfish. I was stupid. But he swallowed. "I didn't stop loving you." I shook my head. "You don't cheat on someone you love." He looked down. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "I don't." His eyes flickered with pain, but I didn't care. For once, I didn't care how he felt. He sighed. "I don't want to lose my daughter." I stiffened. No matter how much I hated him, he was still her father. "I won't keep her from you," I said. "But I won't lie to her forever either." His face paled. "What does that mean?" "It means that one day, when she's old enough, she'll know why we aren't together anymore." Panic flickered across his face. "You don't have to." "I don't have to do anything for you, Daniel." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You made your choices. Now you live with them." His throat bobbed, his eyes glassy. But I didn't care. Not anymore. I stood, smoothing my coat. This is the last time we do this. No more meetings. No more talking. You'll see our daughter, but as far as I'm concerned. I met his gaze. We are done. He exhaled shakily. I really did love you. I gave him a sad smile. But not enough. And with that, I walked away. For the first time in months, I felt weightless. Because Daniel may have broken my heart. But he would never break me.